Welcome back, everyone. Once again, I'm joined by Jesse from Boring Conversation, and we're going to be doing another faction focus video. This one on the Outcasts. It's a bit hard to talk about the Outcasts as a group.
It is. They're a diverse collection of crews, aren't they?
They really are. Outcasts are the masters that don't really fit into any of the other factions. There's a couple themes. Now, a few of the tyrant masters are outcasts.
They sure are.
Two of them, actually.
Yep.
Outcasts also consist of mercenaries, bandits, basically people who are living on the fringes of society. Now, the Outcasts have recently established a headquarters, the town of Freiholt, which is led by Leopold VonSchill of the Freikorps. Now, the Freikorps decided to build this town after mercenary work was outlawed. And so a few of the different outcasts have taken this place as their base, but even then, they're not really united. And the most recent development there is one of the outcasts attacking the rest of them.
Indeed.
So the outcasts are a great faction if you really love the diversity of the setting of Malifaux. You can get pretty much any kind of crew you want, from all human to all monster to kind of somewhere in the middle.
Yep, definitely.
All right, so Hanlin, the first master we're going to talk about.
He sure is.
Hanlin, as you might guess from the name, was once a rat catcher. He had his pipes, and he'd play the pipes, the rats would follow him. He wasn't a very nice man. He was a bully and a thief and a murderer, but until he was swept into the sewers of Malifaux by a storm, that was pretty much all he was. But after he was swept into the sewers, he found the prison of the tyrant plague, and there everything changed.
Yep. His body was consumed by the rats of the sewers, and plague took up residence in his husk of a body.
Yep. And Plague was an alchemist from old Malifaux who discovered the secrets of life and death and used them to create a disease which would spread his power. And even though his power is reduced and he's forced to act through Hanlin, the disease is still there and just as deadly.
Yeah, definitely. And that army of rats does a fantastic job at spreading those blight tokens, his key mechanic, across his enemy crew and really creating a sense of creeping death, which is what his crew does.
Absolutely. Now, Malifaux rats are not very tough individually, and they're not very dangerous individually, but you never see them individually.
Nope.
The crew has huge numbers of rats and can summon more of them trivially.
Yep.
So a Malifaux crew with Hanlin at its head tends to have a few humans and a big carpet of rats.
Yep.
And when you have a ton of those rats, they start collecting into rat kings who start to be really dangerous.
Yeah, they can really bring on the hurt. If your opponent doesn't do a good job of keeping those rats under control and preventing them from turning into those rat kings, they're going to find themselves in for a world of pain. And
as you spread the blight, your attacks become more dangerous, and Hanlin can just burn you out with bleeding disease.
Sure can.
So he's very, very dangerous, but there's a slow creeping inevitability to it. If you can nip it in the bud, maybe you can survive.
Yeah, any of his models that use the bleeding disease attack, meaning himself and his totems, if I recall correctly, at the start of the game, they're doing 1 or 2 damage with this attack, but it does an uncapped amount of damage based on the number of blight tokens on the target. So once you start getting up to 5 or 6 blight tokens, and a totem is hitting you for 5 or 6 damage, yeah,
that's
pretty brutal.
A lot, especially since he gets 3 of them.
Yeah.
And you have to kill those totems because if you try to kill Hanlin and the Stolen are still alive, he'll just pop right out of them again.
You sure will.
So Hanlin's title version, the Piper, takes what I would consider almost a more traditional Pied Piper of Hanlin look. He is all about controlling your enemy, forcing them to obey him. He has various abilities that make it difficult for enemies to do things when they're nearby him. But mostly the heart of his ability is just obey the enemy, force them to attack each other, and spread that blight.
Yeah, and he also has one of the very few ways to curb your opponent's ability to draw cards, which is a very important resource in Malifaux. A lot of crews have very limited card draw, but he can actually pull blight tokens off of enemy models so that when they draw a card, they do not, and he draws a card instead.
Which is just crippling if you're the kind of crew that relies on heavy card draw.
Yeah. If you're playing a resource-intensive crew into Hanlin the Piper, you're going to be in trouble.
You're going to have a bad time.
Yep.
That's Hanlin.
That's Hanlin.
Next, we're going to be talking about Jackdaw.
Jackdaw, one of the few cross-faction masters, and definitely one of my favorites in the Outcast and the Resurrectionist faction, so I'm excited to talk about him.
Yeah, Jackdaw is very cool. Very unique looking, too.
Very cool.
Jackdaw was originally a corpse hanging from the hanging tree. Now, it's not entirely clear what Jackdaw's past is. It's been hinted at a lot in the lore, but never spelled out. But Jackdaw, what he's known for now, is a punisher of the guilty.
Yes.
But really, he's not just a punisher of the guilty, he's a punisher of guilt and betrayal. When there's a serious betrayal or something like that is happening, he will appear with his spirits and his followers and just wreak havoc and devastation against everybody. He doesn't specify who's the guilty and who's the victims. Everybody gets a taste.
Yep, definitely.
And unfortunately, most of his victims end up following him.
They sure do. One of his minions, the guilty, is very unique in that his models, Jackdaw's models, can actually treat them as enemies, which makes for some pretty interesting interactions with the crew.
There's a lot of abilities in Malifaux that are only able to trigger against enemies as a way of balancing it, so you can't just attack your own crew for these benefits. When you have guilty in your crew, you can treat them as enemies and get all those benefits.
You sure can.
Now, Jackdaw's also durable in a very interesting way.
He is. So he, as his primary title, only has 6 wounds, which is literally half the number of wounds of basically every other master in the game.
Yep. But whenever he takes damage, he can choose to discard a card, and however much damage it would have been, it becomes 1.
Right. So when we were talking about Seamus before, if he shoots Jackdaw for 8, it's only 1.
It's only 1. And there are different ways that Jackdaw can heal himself with upgrades or with other models in his crew that he can hire. But mostly what he's there to do is make your opponents feel that guilt.
Yes.
His keyword Tormented can attach upgrades to enemy models that give them the Tormented keyword too. So not only do these upgrades, which we should really call downgrades, penalize the enemy just for having them, but Jackdaw's whole crew gets to draw cards when they attack enemies that have upgrades on them. And they have certain abilities that can only target tormented models. So once you've made your opponents tormented, you can start doing all that stuff to them, moving them around and drawing cards and just really debuffing them.
He also punishes your opponents for taking a lot of upgrades in games against him, where he can gain benefit by attacking models that have upgrades of any type attached, not just the betrayal upgrades that he can get access to.
So he has access to a pretty good and healthy selection of models from both of his factions. He can use Hanged, he can use Guilty, and his henchman Montresor is a hangman, which really ties into a lot of his staggering abilities. He's very good at slowing enemies down and staggering them so they can't move, and Montresor makes it very difficult for staggered enemies to ever shake that condition.
Yep, and he and actually a few other models in the keyword have unique abilities that target move, so that really complements his ability to hand out staggered and reduce enemy models' movement characteristics.
Overall, he's a very polarizing master because of his weird mechanics and his only having 6 wounds. Some crews just can't deal with him and just lose. But if you can counter him, he's actually quite fragile.
He can be. But that's where his title comes in, which really changes the way that he plays quite a bit.
Yes, Jackdaw Ensouled has a full amount of health, and he's incorporeal, which gives him a little bit of damage reduction still. But unlike the original, who's really focused on just picking a model, putting upgrades on it, and then choking it to death, Jackdaw Ensouled is much more about mobility and about damaging many enemy models at once with AoE attacks.
He also has the unique ability of making an enemy model have a hazardous terrain aura around it, so that when friendly models start moving around it, they're taking damage just for being in proximity. He also has an incredible amount of movement speed. He can rocket himself across the board and turn himself into a problem for his enemy's crew very quickly.
And once he's in the middle of your crew, pulling you in, it's very difficult to survive. He does huge amounts of damage in an AoE. So Jackdaw's got some very interesting play, and if you're playing against him and you don't know which version you're taking, you really don't know how to build.
Yeah, and regardless of which version of Jackdaw you take, he puts an incredible resource drain on your opponents just because of the sheer number of models with Terrifying in his crew. When you have 1 or 2 models in a crew with Terrifying, it's annoying and can cause problems, but when 6 out of 8 of your opponent's models have it, it can be a real problem.
It really can.
Yeah.
That's Jackdaw.
That's Jackdaw.
Next, we're going to be talking about Leviticus, another one of the classic Malifaux masters that goes way back to the first edition of the game. Leviticus is the proprietor of Captivating Salvage and Logistics, a salvage shop. And most people think that's all he is, just kind of a weird old man with an inappropriately young female assistant who goes out and collects scrap from Malifaux and turns it into new inventions. But actually what he is much darker.
Yes, he has some very dark powers to bring to bear.
Leviticus, yes. Leviticus has learned the art of amalgamating flesh and steel in horrific ways. And he's also obsessed with immortality. And the way he gains that is not through living forever, but simply coming back every time he dies. He has prepared hollow waifs these soulless husk bodies that he remotely controls with his mind. And when he dies, which is often because of the dangerous magic he channels through his body, he simply pops back to life out of one of his hollow waifs. He's a little bit simplified from his older incarnations, which tended to involve extremely complicated loops of dying and being reborn. But this new version still drains his life to power his magic and then heals himself back up, either by draining life from enemies or by just popping out of a waif.
Yeah, and that's one very interesting mechanic that Leviticus brings to bear is his ability to deal damage to himself to enhance his own abilities to deal damage to other models or have other effects. His primary attack, Death Touch, is only a 2-3-4 damage track, but it does irreducible damage at base, and he has the ability to gain the Necrotic Decay trigger, increasing his damage by up to 2 based on the amount of damage that he does to himself. So suddenly that turns into a 4, 5, 6 irreducible damage track, which is absolutely brutal.
His Unmaking attack is also one of the very, very few abilities in the game that does irreducible damage at range. Very, very few things can do that. It's dangerous. You do have to watch his health a bit, especially if you're spending it on his Necrotic Decay trigger. But the trade-off is that if you are spending that health, the damage output is second to none.
And he actually has the ability on his card to kill himself and then just respawn himself through one of his waifs, allowing him to reposition significantly across the table if he finds himself in a bad spot or just needs to be somewhere else to score his points.
Absolutely. Yep. Now, his title version, though, is something very different.
Oh, yes.
Another thing that harkens back to the first edition of the game. If you've played Malifaux, you've probably seen the Riders, the Dead Rider, the Pale Rider, the Mechanical Rider, and the Hooded Rider, who represent the Horsemen of the Apocalypse. Leviticus is the fifth Rider, the Pariah of Blood. When Leviticus goes into his title form, he gains the Horseman keyword, which allows him to hire any rider. But he can't hire any models that aren't either versatile or that share a keyword with him. So he's pretty much locked into just his amalgam models and his horsemen.
Yes. But boy, oh boy, what a crew he can bring to bear. That's for sure.
The horsemen all use fate tokens to activate their abilities, and Leviticus can generate them and move them around, and he can use them himself.
Yeah, the horsemen are usually restricted in their ability to use their bonus actions to great effect by the turn number. They gain a number of fate tokens based on the turn number. So turn 1, you gain 1, turn 2, you gain 2, so on and so forth.
And you need to spend a lot of them to activate those abilities.
You do. There's no way just by playing the horsemen that you can manipulate the number of fate tokens that they have, but Leviticus allows you to do exactly that. He can move fate tokens from one model to another, which allows them to use their most powerful abilities much sooner or more times per game than they would normally be able to.
He's also very fast because he's on horseback.
Sure is.
He no longer comes back from the dead, but he has a very interesting attack that has the unique ability to declare multiple different triggers.
Yes, he does.
Which nobody else can do currently.
That's it.
And so he has a lot of flexibility in what he can do with that attack. It's a very cool crew. It might be seen as a little bit of a gimmick, especially if you bring all 4 horsemen, but it's still kind of unique, and it gives you a lot of flexibility in what you can do in the game.
It's very fun to play.
It is a lot of fun.
Yes, definitely.
That's Leviticus. Next, we're going to talk about Parker Barrows.
Parker Barrows.
His name's like my name.
It is.
So Parker Barrows is the heir of the fairly rich and powerful Barrows family.
He's a bandit.
Unfortunately, he has been dispossessed by his brother. Parker doesn't mind that as much as maybe you'd think he would. He likes being a bandit.
Yeah, he's settled into his new lifestyle pretty well.
So Parker is pretty much the classic train robbing desperado. His crew is his banditos, and of course Doc Mitchell, who they took hostage on one of their raids and just haven't let free since.
Doc's always looking for his chance to escape or kill Parker, though, is he not?
I think he's probably going to be looking for quite a while longer.
I think so,
Parker's got an eye out.
He sure does.
But Parker's a lot of fun, a really cool master, and also unusual for the Outcasts, pretty much fully human.
Yeah, absolutely. Him and his entire crew are strictly human. They don't have any monsters or constructs or anything like that in there. And they make their way through the game by actually forcing your opponent to drop their own scheme markers, which is very unusual.
That's usually something you don't want to do because you want to drop your own scheme markers in order to do schemes.
Right.
But Parker can actually benefit from enemy scheme markers being on the board. Him and his crew can steal them. They represent loot, basically. So they can steal the loot from the people he sticks up and then trigger various effects from that.
Yep. He can enhance his own abilities, most of his crew has the ability to remove a nearby scheme marker to gain fast. So you end up having a lot of fast models that all have the run and gun ability so that they can take a charge action and then use a ranged attack instead of just a melee attack. So they have a lot of fast models with a lot of action efficiency. And another unique characteristic of the crew is that a lot of his models actually have fairly low stat attacks. Even Parker himself has a base stat of only 5 on his primary attack.
But they have those built-in plus twists to hit a lot of
They do.
them, which is a really big deal.
Built-in positive twists can be enormously helpful. And Parker himself, speaking of the scheme marker shtick, has the ability to increase the stat value of his attack based on the number of scheme markers in proximity to his target. So he can actually get up to a stat 7.
A stat 7 with a built-in plus twist is hitting almost all the time.
Almost all the time.
So Parker's crew is, I think, a really good newbie crew, too, because they're very mobile, because of the ability to charge and shoot, and because they're mostly a ranged crew, which means you don't worry quite as much about positioning as you would otherwise.
Definitely. They're fairly forgiving, too. You really can afford to make a lot of mistakes and still function as a crew. They also have access to arguably one of the best models in the faction, which is Mad Dog Bracket.
Oh, Mad Dog's insane.
Yeah.
Tossing dynamite, blasting things with a shotgun, or just putting out a cigar in someone's face.
That's it.
Mad Dog's great. Now, Parker, we said is fully human. Parker's title version, Dead Man Walking, is maybe pushing that a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit.
So the guild captured Parker after one of his heists, and they decided to hang him. And they got, I would say, about 3/4 of the way there before the arrival of the Burning Man put a kibosh on the whole proceedings.
Sure did.
So Parker has been set free, but he's not quite the man he was. He's a lot more consumed with vengeance and anger against the guild. And where Parker 1 was kind of a happy-go-lucky bandit, Parker 2's got a bit of an edge to him.
Oh, he's got an axe to grind, that's for sure.
Parker 2 really benefits from the dropping scheme markers, not necessarily because he's drawing cards or getting soul stones, but because they do damage.
Yeah, they
when
sure
the
do.
scheme marker within 10 inches of him drops, he can ping out damage to enemy models that are nearby. And because a lot of his models have the ability to force an enemy to drop a scheme marker when they shoot them, a lot of the time, Parker can stack that damage up.
He sure can. He also has the very unique ranged attack, a very unique ranged attack with a whopping 14-inch range. Only has a 2/3 but 6 severe damage track, and it ignores hard to kill, which can be very brutal.
It also has a trigger once per activation to get 2 positive twists to the damage flip, which means
Double
it's
positive.
almost impossible that your opponent would get you to a minus twist, especially if you focused, which means you can almost certainly cheat, and you get that 6 damage ignoring hard to kill is brutal.
Yeah, that sweet 6 damage severe is no joke.
He also can hand out staggered, which is a pretty powerful condition. And he has the ability to push around markers, which is something that a lot of crews struggle with, especially when they're not scheme markers. So some things like pyre markers can be hard to deal with. Kaufman's pylons, he can just sort of shove them out of the way.
Yep, he sure can. And he actually, with that same ability that he can use to move markers, he can actually hand out injured, which is a very powerful ability, especially when you consider that a lot of his crew does only have that stat 5. Putting injured on an enemy model makes that stat 5 not so bad.
Especially when they can't do anything to resist it. They don't flip or anything. It just happens.
Just plain old happens.
Parker's really cool.
He is.
I like him a lot. I think if I played Outcast, I would probably want to play Parker. And not just because his name is like my name.
Yes, I think low-key he's probably one of the best masters in the faction.
And that's Parker.
That's Parker.
Next, we're going to talk about Terra.
Indeed, Terra, the boogeyman of Outcasts.
Oh, yeah. So we just talked about how Parker's a really good intro crew. At whatever end of complexity that Parker is on one end of, Terra is on the other end.
Yes, she's pretty complicated. I've heard some people say that she can be a good introductory crew.
I don't buy it.
I don't buy it.
So Terra was originally an ordinary woman. She was a bounty hunter, and she found herself drawn into the prison of the Tyrant Obliteration, a very strange entity that lives outside of space-time. The prison of Obliteration is this timeless void, and many people and things have been trapped in there. Terra, having been drawn in, made a pact with Obliteration and was spat back out, along with Karina, a necromancer who had been trapped in there. Terra became the avatar of Obliteration and started spreading its power and its word, using its energy to conquer and to enslave and destroy. But at the height of her power, she was killed by a sniper. Karina raised her from the dead. And because of Terra's connection to Obliteration, she kept her consciousness, her mind, and her will. And so now she is undead, still serving her master, but with all the abilities and powers of being an undead creature.
Yes, and her control over time is the unique keyword ability. she and a lot of her other models can actually give enemy models fast, which you'd usually think is kind of a bad idea. But then they can consume that fast for various effects. Most importantly, her summons, which come into the game buried, can actually unbury in base contact with an opponent's model that has fast and end that condition.
So when a model's buried, as you may know, it's off the board. A lot of models use burying kind of like Magic the Gathering's Exile Zone for something that's temporarily not in the game, and Terra takes that to the ultimate degree. A lot of Terra's models want to bury themselves so they can pop out later, and one of them, the Scion of the Void, actually just wants to stay buried because it can do things while it's buried. She also buries enemies because her crew can attack enemies while they're buried. And while they're buried, they're helpless and can't fight back.
Yep.
So she's very, very cool but complicated because you have to juggle burying and unburying, giving things fast. Fortunately, Terra herself is pretty straightforward in what she does. She gets 2 activations in a turn.
She does.
Which is incredible.
Yep.
And she's also highly mobile.
Yep. She has a leap effect on her base card that she can use to get basically anywhere that she needs to on the table.
A lot of the time, a game against Terra involves her crew kind of attacking you and killing you and tying you up and interfering, while Terra herself just runs around scoring the schemes and strategy.
And a key part of playing against Terra is being, as the opponent, able to identify where you need to apply your resources to avoid getting fast or to avoid getting buried. You're not going to be able to pass all the tests. Her crew simply puts out too many of them, but you have to be able to identify which ones are the most critical to her success.
She's definitely dangerous.
Definitely.
And her title version, Terra Timeless, is kind of interesting and unique. Terra Timeless is very much focused on the whole time control. She has the ability to rewind. So she can place a marker down near a model, a friendly or an enemy model. And at the end of another model's activation, she can make that model teleport all the way back to that marker, rewinding it back. There's a lot of interesting things you can do with that. Some of them are kind of borderline abusive of the game rules, but she's pretty neat just in the way that she's really focused on the whole time control aspect of the crew. She doesn't summon anymore, but she has much more about pushing things around, moving enemies, keeping them buried, and keeping them trapped in that void.
Yeah, and one thing that really plays into both of her versions is ability to control end-of-turn activations. Her crew can generate pass tokens. Her titled version can actually force enemy models to treat themselves as having passed their activation, so that she can ensure that she actually gets last activation pretty much every turn, which is very important for controlling the game and making sure that she scores her points.
So Terra is definitely a very complicated master. Also, a kind of a cool aesthetic. The obliteration creatures all have this kind of Cloverfield vibe to them. If you remember those little parasites that would fall off the big monster. But they also have this almost Lovecraftian view to them, which is very neat. So Terra is definitely, if you're really into Malifaux's lore and its background, Terra is kind of an interesting look at an aspect of that lore you don't see very often.
Yeah, she's definitely got that sort of cosmic horror vibe, which I really enjoy. Very cool stuff.
Very much so. And that's Terra.
That's Terra.
One of the next masters, I should say, masters, is Victoria Chambers. Now, the unique thing about Victoria is that there's 2 of her.
There sure are.
Victoria was a mercenary who came to Malifaux in order to make her fortune, but she brought with her a sword, the Masamuna Nihanto, which was an extremely powerful sword that, unbeknownst to her, carried the essence of the tyrant Shazul. When the Neverborn found out about this, they decided to try to take the sword away so that Shazul couldn't be set free, and they sent a mimic out to kill Victoria and steal the sword. Unbeknownst to either of them, though, when Victoria attacked the mimic, she somehow severed its connection to its Neverborn masters, and the mimic, surviving, realized that it had a lot in common with her. And so the mimic has retained her shape. When you take Victoria, you get a second Victoria for free.
Yep, identical models.
Identical in every way. So unlike everybody else, you're playing with 2 masters.
Sure are.
Now, the Victorias are a bit fragile.
They are.
But they're extremely deadly.
Yes, and very mobile.
I would say Glass Cannon is pretty much the descriptor for Victoria.
Yeah, definitely. If you put them in before you should, they will fold. But if you wait until just the right opportunity to get them into the mix, they will tear stuff up and heal each other back up and support each other in such a way that your opponent will have a very difficult time dealing with them.
Her keyword, the mercenary keyword, is really mobile, as Jesse's alluded to. They're fast. They do very heavy damage in melee. They have some ranged capacity too. They're not helpless at range, even if melee is definitely where they want to be. And they're just really able to get where you need them to be, which is important for a master. Her title, though, very interesting and unique. Another callback to way back in first edition. When you have Victoria's title, you only get one.
But you get both of them on the same base.
Oh, yes. Victoria's, the twin blades.
Yes.
Victoria's title is quite a bit less fragile than the original. She's, especially at range, almost impossible to remove.
Yeah, with bulletproof +2, any ranged attacks that you throw at her, they're probably going to end up getting reduced to 1.
And when the enemy is hitting her in melee, they can't cheat their melee attacks. So she's really hard to remove, which kind of trades off the fact that you're only getting one of them. And she's still, of course, just as deadly in melee.
Oh, yeah, definitely. She has a whopping 3-4-6 damage track on a stat 6 with a plus flip and access to critical strike. So if you really commit a lot of resources to it, she can go up to a whopping 5-6-8 damage track.
Oh, yeah.
Pretty filthy.
She also has a little bit more of an ability to support her crew with her Treasure Seekers action. That's something that the original Victorias don't really do. They really focus on supporting each other, but not so much their crew. The new one really can kind of buff the mercenaries a bit and make them more able to put out that pain.
Yeah, definitely. And between not being able to cheat your attacks when swinging on them in melee and her ability to create a hazardous terrain aura around herself, it really makes it difficult to get to grips with this model. You can't shoot it. You're going to have a really tough time hitting them in melee, and you're probably going to hurt yourself in doing so. So you really need to have a plan or some specific tech pieces to be able to deal with this master.
Yeah, very interesting master, Victoria's. And of course, one of the classic Malifaux models. Absolutely iconic in the setting.
Absolutely. That's another one that if you see any sort of art, good chance you've probably seen the Victorias.
Absolutely. And that's the Vix.
That's the Vix.
So, we're up to our last Outcast master
We sure
already.
are.
We're going to be talking about VonSchill.
The ultimate toolbox.
Leopold VonSchill, based on Ferdinand VonSchill, by the way, is the leader of the Freikorps, a mercenary company in Malifaux. Now, VonSchill had the chance to be a high-ranking guild soldier, but he values his independence quite a bit too much to do that.
Oh, yes.
So when the new Governor General, Franco Marlowe, made mercenary work illegal, VonSchill took his Freikorps way out into the Badlands to found the city of Freiholt, where mercenaries could be mercenaries and ply their trade without guild interference. Now, VonSchill is a very serious guy. He's not just about killing things. He's about organization. He's about discipline. He's about training. So he's putting Freiholt together, and he's got quite a bit of funding for it because everyone needs mercenaries in Malifaux. It's a very dangerous place.
And one thing that's very interesting about VonSchill, like some other masters, is his theme and his abilities have actually changed over time along with the story. So much so that between 2nd and 3rd edition, he got into a little bit of a spat with Rasputina, and he really paid the price.
Yeah, he lost an arm and a leg.
And that significantly changed the way that his model plays on the tabletop in 3rd edition.
So VonSchill's crew, his Freikorps, are very highly trained, highly drilled, and well-equipped mercenaries. And one of their key abilities is equipment. So VonSchill can hand out equipment like a rocket launcher, an assault shield, a grenade belt, all these different types of special weapons that they can use to make special attacks with.
They sure can. And he can use those equipment upgrades when correctly applied to certain models to do all manner of things that you don't even really notice when you look at the equipment itself. The combination of the equipment abilities and the model's abilities that you put them on can make for some pretty interesting interactions, including giant stompy robots with rocket boots.
Absolutely. And VonSchill himself is no slouch. He's a very tough model, very durable, very hard to hit, and can do a surprising amount of damage with his clockwork arm and his custom clockwork rifle.
Yeah, and with his ability to resist damage by having both blast resistant and armor, and survivalist, so that when he heals, which his crew can do quite a bit of, he's always getting +1 on the healing flip. He can be a model that is very difficult to put down.
He can, and his crew, being armored themselves, are also pretty tough. The Freikorps, I would say, are just a very durable, highly trained, jack-of-all-trades type crew.
Definitely.
I would say another very good intro crew.
Yeah.
They're durable, they're tough, they are able to play with some tricks, but mostly they're just putting out the pain and soaking it up.
Yeah, they sure are.
Now, VonSchill's title version represents what's happened after Hanlin attacked Freiholt. VonSchill was injured, but he doesn't want to be out of the action, so he's basically had himself put in a giant walking iron lung. And VonSchill Ironheart is a beast.
Oh, he is. He has traded out his abilities to some degree to support and buff his crew, to instead buff himself and then hand those equipment upgrades out to the crew after he's done with them. And he has replaced his otherwise decent melee attack with an absolutely beastly heavy claws attack with a 2-inch engage and a 3-4-6 damage track with the potential to put out blast markers. Pretty nasty stuff.
Yeah, he just wants to bulldoze his way in there and smash things apart. Now, he does have some ability to support his crew. He can heal them. He can give them focused. He can give them equipment. But a lot of what VonSchill Ironheart is doing is just basically leading the way and expecting his crew to follow up.
Yes, indeed. And he is quite a bit to deal with, that's for sure.
He's a great master. I think a really good intro to the game and someone I would encourage you to check out and to take pretty seriously when you see him on the other side of the battlefield.
Really cool looking model, too, for sure.
Very cool. Very
cool.
And that's VonSchill.
That's VonSchill.
So that was the Outcasts.
Yeah, that was the Outcasts.
Outcasts are a pretty cool faction.
They are. And like you were saying in the intro, they're a very diverse faction. They're one where, if a new player gets into it, dips their toes into one keyword, and then wants to try something significantly different, they don't really need to go to another faction to experience that.
Yeah, Outcasts have really grown. They were originally kind of the mercenary faction that other factions could hire from, and now they've really become their own thing, which is great.
They really are. Yep.
So we hope you enjoyed this video. I'd encourage you to check out the article that goes with this video on Goonhammer.com. The link will be in the description. And I'd also encourage you to check out the Discord that we've got, the Danger Planet Discord, where we talk about Malifaux and all of our other games as well. Also in the description. And I'd also encourage you to check out Jesse's podcast, Boring Conversation, which is great, both if you're new to Malifaux and if you're an experienced player. I think you get a lot out of it. It's a great podcast, and you'll find the link in the description. So if you like this video, please comment and subscribe.
Indeed.
We need to sync the
We need an audio sync.
We need to throw it in the ocean where it sinks.
He's going to do it again. Check it out.
I wonder how many times I can make him clack it.
How many times? I don't know.
Oh, that's not a clack.
No, it's not.
That's
we get the
unfriendly.
message, though.
We get the, okay, ready?
Give us another clack.
One more for good luck. I wasn't feeling that one. I think you're going to have to clack it.
Ah! Okay, last one.
No, that was it. That was perfect.
was it?
That clack was it. You did it.
That was the worst clack of all!
No, you don't know how to judge clacks. No. I'm sorry, you're just going to have to clack us again. That one was insufficient.
I don't necessarily appreciate the critique of the clack.
No, but it's really funny, so I'm going to keep doing it. All right. Maybe smush his face right into the thing. It's going to be like,
Yeah.
okay, cool.
I don't want to lick the
We're
mic.
good?
Yes, very important.
We're just going to talk about all the body
Talk very
pillows
closely.
that I'm going to order. I'm going to have a body pillow
sitting
with Brandon.
Closely
It's going to be a Brandon
into the microphone.
and he's going to be smiling, which
I'm going
Brandon
to
never
sit
does.
very closely
You smile sometimes.
and speak into the microphone
Not
clearly